The massive space station Nexus Prime floated like a glowing city among the stars. Its metal walls stretched for kilometers in every direction. Hundreds of ships from across the galaxy had docked at its ports. Inside the main council chamber, representatives from 12 different alien species sat around a circular table that seemed to glow with its own inner light. Captain Lee Dae-ho stood quietly near the back wall of the chamber. He wore the dark blue uniform of Earth's space fleet. His black hair was cut short and neat. His face showed no emotion as he listened to the heated arguments filling the room. The other species were talking loudly about the coming threat. Some were shouting. Some were making strange clicking sounds that served as their language. At the center of the table sat a holographic display showing a star map. Red dots marked the areas where the enemy had struck. 3 entire star systems had been consumed, billions of lives lost. The red zone was growing larger each day. Counselor Velthar rose from his seat. He was tall and covered in green scales that caught the chamber's light. His yellow eyes swept across the room before settling on Captain Lee. When Velthar spoke, his voice carried a tone of disgust. "So this is what Earth sends us," Velthar said with a laugh that sounded like grinding stones. "One small ship and one human captain. How generous of your primitive world." The other alien representatives turned to look at Captain Lee. Some made sounds that might have been laughter in their languages. Others simply stared with what seemed like pity or disappointment. Ambassador Crix clicked her mandibles together in what Lee had learned was her species' way of showing agreement. She was insectoid, with 4 arms and large compound eyes that reflected the room's light like mirrors. "The Manthari Empire brings 50 heavy cruisers to this fight," she said in her buzzing voice. "The Zephyrians have contributed 100 ships. Even the smallest member worlds have sent at least 20 vessels each, and Earth sends 1. Captain Lee remained silent. He had been expecting this reaction. Earth's leaders had warned him that the other species would not understand. They could not see past the simple appearance of things. Admiral Kim Tae-sung stepped forward from where he had been standing beside a pillar. He was older than Captain Lee, with gray hair and lines around his eyes that spoke of years spent making difficult decisions. As Earth's military liaison to the Alliance, he had dealt with this kind of dismissal many times before. "Earth's contribution may seem small," Admiral Kim said in a calm voice, "but I assure you it will be effective." Velthar's laugh filled the chamber again. "Effective? Your species has barely left its home system. Your technology is centuries behind ours. Your weapons are crude projectiles compared to our plasma arrays and antimatter cannons. What could one human ship possibly do against the Vorthak swarm that our combined fleets cannot?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Captain Lee finally stepped forward. His boots made soft sounds on the metal floor as he walked toward the central table. All eyes in the chamber followed his movement. "The Vorthak have consumed 3 star systems," Captain Lee said, in a voice that was quiet but carried clearly through the chamber. "They destroyed everything in their path. Your combined fleets tried to stop them at the Rigel system 2 months ago. How did that battle end?" Silence fell over the chamber. The aliens looked uncomfortable. Some shifted in their seats. Others made small sounds that suggested embarrassment or anger. Fleet Admiral Keskatar, the overall commander of the Alliance forces, spoke from his position at the head of the table. He was a being of pure energy, contained within a crystalline form that pulsed with blue light. "The Rigel battle was a tactical withdrawal," he said carefully. "You lost 400 ships," Captain Lee said simply. "The Vorthak lost maybe 50. Your weapons barely scratched their biohulls. Their ships heal faster than you can damage them. Every battle has been the same story. You attack with everything you have and they brush you aside like insects." Angry sounds filled the chamber. Several representatives stood up from their seats. Velthar's scales seemed to darken with rage. "How dare you speak to us this way?" Velthar hissed. "Your backward species knows nothing of warfare on this scale. We have been fighting among the stars for thousands of years while your people were still living in caves." Captain Lee remained calm. He placed his hands behind his back and looked around the chamber at each representative in turn. "You are right," he said. Earth is young compared to your civilizations. We have not been fighting in space for thousands of years, but we have been fighting each other on one small world for all of human history. We learn to survive by thinking differently. We learn to win by finding new ways to solve old problems. Dr. Park Hee-jin entered the chamber through a side door. She was a small woman with quick, intelligent eyes behind thin glasses. She carried a datapad in her hands and moved with the precise steps of someone who spent most of her time working with delicate equipment. She was Earth's chief weapons engineer and one of the most brilliant minds in the human space fleet. The technical briefing is ready, Captain, Dr. Park said quietly as she approached. Captain Lee nodded to her, then looked back at the assembled aliens. You mock Earth for sending one ship. You think we do not understand the magnitude of this threat, but you are wrong on both counts. We understand exactly what we face, and one ship is all we need. The chamber erupted in sounds of disbelief and anger. Velthar slammed one of his clawed hands on the table. Impossible. The Vorthax swarm contains over 2,000 bioships. Each one is the size of a small moon. Their weapons can crack planets, their armor regenerates from any damage. How could one small human vessel possibly make a difference? Captain Lee smiled for the first time since entering the chamber. It was not a pleasant smile. Because you are still thinking like prey, he said. You see the Vorthak as an unstoppable force of nature, something to be endured or escaped from. But they are not a natural disaster. They are an enemy, and every enemy has a weakness. Admiral Kim stepped forward again. Captain Lee speaks the truth. Earth has developed new weapons specifically designed to exploit the Vorthak's biological nature. We have studied their remains from previous battles. We know how their ships function, how their hive minds connect, how their regeneration works. New weapons. Fleet Admiral Keskatar's crystalline form pulsed brighter. What kind of new weapons? Dr. Park looked at Captain Lee, who nodded slightly. She activated her datapad and a new hologram appeared above the central table. It showed the technical specifications of a weapon system unlike anything the aliens had seen before. Quantum cascade cannons, Dr. Park said in her clear, professional voice. They work by creating a chain reaction through organic neural networks. When the beam hits one target, it spreads to any connected biological systems. The more connected the targets are, the more devastating the effect. The chamber fell completely silent. The alien representatives stared at the hologram with expressions ranging from confusion to growing understanding to something that might have been fear. Velthar was the first to speak. That is theoretical at best. Quantum mechanics at that level is beyond current technology. No species has successfully weaponized quantum cascade effects. No species except humanity, Captain Lee said quietly. Our isolation forced us to explore paths that others ignored. While you perfected energy, weapons, and improved your ship armor, we learned to manipulate the fundamental forces of the universe. The implications of his words slowly sank in around the chamber. If Earth had truly developed quantum cascade weapons, and if those weapons could exploit the Vorthak's biological nature, then perhaps one human ship really could make a difference. But most of the aliens were not ready to believe. They had spent too many years seeing humanity as primitive and backward. The idea that these young newcomers might possess technology beyond their understanding was difficult to accept. The meeting continued for several more hours. Plans were made for the coming battle. Ship positions were assigned. The human vessel, designated as the battleship Indomitable, was placed in the rearguard position where it would be safe from the main fighting. Captain Lee accepted this assignment without protest. He knew that his ship would have its chance to prove what Earth could do. When that moment came, the galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again. As the meeting ended and the representatives began to leave, Velthar approached Captain Lee one final time. I hope for your sake that your weapons work as promised, the Zephyrian said with what might have been genuine concern beneath his arrogance. Because if they fail, your one small ship will be destroyed in the first minutes of battle. And humanity's first venture into galactic warfare will be its last. Captain Lee met the alien's yellow eyes without flinching. Our weapons will work, he said simply. "The question is whether your fleets will be ready for what comes after." The Alliance fleet moved through space like a massive cloud of metal and energy. 800 ships from 12 different species traveled together toward the Kepler 442 system. Their engines created streams of light that stretched behind them for thousands of kilometers. The largest vessels were the size of cities. Even the smallest fighters were bigger than most buildings on Earth. In the middle of this vast armada, the human battleship Indomitable looked tiny and insignificant. Its dark hull reflected none of the colorful lights from the alien vessels around it. To any observer, it seemed like a small fishing boat surrounded by giant ocean liners. Captain Lee Dae-ho stood on the bridge of his ship and watched the other vessels through the main viewing screen. His crew worked quietly at their stations, around him. The bridge was smaller than those on the alien ships, but every surface gleamed with careful maintenance. Every system hummed with perfect efficiency. Lieutenant Commander Cho Min-ho approached from the tactical station. He was a young officer with sharp eyes and quick movements. His uniform was as neat as his captain's, and he carried himself with the confidence of someone who had trained for this moment his entire life. "Captain, we're receiving the final battle assignments," Cho said as he handed over a data tablet. "Fleet Admiral Keskatar has placed us in the rear guard position, approximately 50,000 kilometers behind the main battle line." Captain Lee read through the orders without changing expression. Around him, other crew members exchanged glances. Some looked disappointed. Others seemed relieved that they would be far from the heaviest fighting. "They want us to stay safe," said Chief Petty Officer Yoon So-ra from her position at the weapons control station. She was a tough woman with calloused hands and the kind of steady voice that came from years of handling dangerous equipment. "They think we'll be destroyed if we get too close to the real battle." Captain Lee set down the tablet and looked at his crew. "They are trying to protect us because they believe we are weak. They cannot imagine that our single ship might be more dangerous than their entire fleet combined." In the ship's main engineering section, Dr. Park Hee-jin worked with her team to make final preparations. The quantum cascade cannons were unlike any weapon system ever built. They looked deceptively simple from the outside, just smooth metal cylinders mounted along the ship's hull. But inside each cannon was technology that pushed the boundaries of known science. Engineer Bang Woo-jin stood beside one of the cannon assemblies, running diagnostic tests on the quantum field generators. He was Dr. Park's second in command, a careful man who understood that the smallest mistake with these weapons could destroy their own ship, along with any enemies. "The quantum resonance chambers are calibrated and ready," Bang reported as Dr. Park approached. "All 6 cannons are showing green status lights. The targeting computers have been loaded with the biological signature data from previous Vorthak encounters." Dr. Park nodded and activated her handheld scanner. The device showed her readouts from deep inside the weapon systems. Quantum particles danced in carefully controlled patterns waiting to be unleashed. "The cascade effect should propagate through any connected organic neural networks," she said quietly. "The more tightly connected the targets are, the faster and farther the reaction will spread." "And if it works too well?" Bang asked. "If the cascade effect spreads beyond our intended targets?" Dr. Park had considered this possibility many times during the weapon's development. "The quantum field will naturally decay after approximately 30 seconds of propagation. It cannot sustain itself indefinitely, but within that time frame it will follow every biological connection it encounters." Back on the bridge, Captain Lee received a communication request from the Alliance command ship. The main screen flickered and showed the crystalline form of Fleet Admiral Keskatar. The alien commander's energy body pulsed with nervous blue light. "Captain Lee, our scouts have detected the incoming Vorthak fleet," Keskatar said in his echoing voice. "They number over 2,000 bioships, just as our intelligence predicted. The largest vessels are nearly 10 kilometers in length. I want to confirm that your ship will remain in the assigned rear position during the engagement." "Understood, Admiral," Captain Lee replied. "The Indomitable will hold position as ordered until circumstances require us to act." Something in the human captain's tone made the fleet admiral's light flicker with uncertainty. "What do you mean by circumstances requiring you to act?" "Your orders are to remain in the rear guard position for the duration of the battle. Captain Lee smiled slightly. Of course, Admiral. We will follow orders. But if the main fleet requires assistance, Earth will not stand by and watch our allies be destroyed. The communication ended with Keskatar looking troubled. The alien commander had begun to suspect that there was more to the human ship than met the eye, but he could not imagine what one small vessel could do against the massive Vorthak swarm. Throughout the Alliance fleet, other commanders were having similar conversations. On the Zephyrian flagship, Counselor Velthar met with his military advisors in a chamber lined with glowing green crystals. The humans continue to act as if they possess some secret advantage, Velthar said as he paced back and forth. His scales caught the crystal light and threw shifting patterns on the walls. But our sensors show nothing unusual about their ship. It has standard hull plating, conventional engines and weapon systems we cannot identify but which appear unremarkable in size and power output. General Krikstal, Velthar's chief military advisor, activated a holographic display showing the human vessel. Their ship does emit some unusual quantum signatures, but nothing that suggests weapons beyond our understanding. Perhaps they are simply attempting to hide their fear behind false confidence. Perhaps, Velthar agreed, but something in the way the human captain had spoken suggested that fear was the last thing on his mind. The Alliance fleet reached the edge of the Kepler 442 system and began forming battle lines. The massive dreadnoughts took positions at the front, their weapons charged and ready. Smaller cruisers and destroyers spread out in supporting formations. Fighter squadrons launched from carrier ships and formed protective screens around the larger vessels. And in the rear, far from the expected battle zone, the Indomitable waited alone. On the bridge of the human ship, Lieutenant Commander Cho monitored the incoming sensor data. The Vorthak fleet has entered the system's outer boundary, he reported. Initial scans confirm over 2,000 bioships. They're moving in a loose swarm formation, approximately 5 million kilometers wide. Captain Lee studied the tactical display that showed both fleets approaching each other. The Alliance vessels looked like an organized wall of metal and energy. The Vorthak swarm appeared as an organic cloud of living ships, each one pulsing, with bioluminescent patterns that spoke of alien intelligence. Look at how they move, Dr. Park said as she joined the bridge crew. She had come up from engineering to observe the approaching enemy firsthand. Their formation is not random. Every ship is connected to every other ship through some kind of biological network. They function as a single organism, rather than individual vessels. Captain Lee nodded. This was exactly what Earth scientists had hoped to find. The Vorthak's greatest strength was about to become their greatest weakness. Distance to enemy fleet? He asked. 2 million kilometers in closing, Cho reported. The Alliance fleet is moving to intercept. Estimated time to weapons range is 47 minutes. And our rear guard position puts us how far from the main battle line? 50,000 kilometers behind the Alliance formation as ordered. Captain Lee walked to the center of the bridge and looked at each of his crew members in turn. These men and women had trained for years to operate the most advanced weapons system humanity had ever created. They had volunteered for a mission that might end with all of them dying in the cold darkness between stars. The aliens think we are here to hide safely behind their protection, he said in a voice that carried to every corner of the bridge. They believe Earth's contribution to this battle will be minimal. They see us as children who need to be kept away from the real fighting. He paused and looked at the tactical display showing the approaching enemy swarm. They are about to learn that humanity did not come here to hide. We came here to hunt. The crew straightened at their stations. Hands moved to weapon controls. Eyes focused on targeting displays. The Indomitable might be small compared to the alien dreadnoughts around it, but its crew was ready to prove that size was not everything. In the distance, the first energy beams began to flash between the advancing fleets. The battle for the Kepler 442 system was about to begin, and the galaxy was about to discover what happened when someone was foolish enough to underestimate the human race. Captain Lee settled into his command chair and watched the enemy approach. Soon, very soon, it would be time to show these aliens what Earth's single ship could really do. The first energy beams lit up the darkness between the fleets like deadly lightning. Purple plasma bolts from the Zephyrian dreadnoughts struck the leading Vorthak bioships and exploded in brilliant flashes. The alien vessels responded with streams of acid-green bioenergy that melted through Alliance hull armor like it was paper. Captain Lee watched the battle unfold on his main screen from 50,000 kilometers away. The Indomitable held its rear guard position while the massive Alliance fleet engaged the enemy swarm. What he saw made his jaw tighten with concern. The Vorthak bioships were unlike anything the Alliance had faced before. Each vessel looked like a living creature stretched out to impossible size. Their hulls pulsed with veins of bioluminescent light. When Alliance weapons struck them, the damaged areas began healing immediately. Torn sections regrew. Burned armor plates regenerated. It was like shooting at something that could not be killed. Lieutenant Commander Cho studied his tactical display with growing alarm. "Captain, the Alliance fleet is taking heavy casualties. They've lost 40 ships in the first 10 minutes. The Vorthak vessels are barely showing damage. Their weapons are having no lasting effect," added Chief Petty Officer Yoon from her station. "Every time they hurt one of those bioships, it just heals itself and keeps fighting." On the Alliance command channel, voices filled with panic and desperation crackled through the speakers. Ship captains reported weapon systems failing to penetrate enemy armor. Medical officers called for help as bioacid ate through hull plating and poisoned their crews. Engineers screamed about systems failing as the organic weapons seemed to infect their machinery. Fleet Admiral Keskatar's crystalline form pulsed with frantic red light as he tried to coordinate the failing battle. "All ships focus fire on individual targets. Concentrate your weapons to overwhelm their healing ability." But the Vorthak swarm had learned from previous encounters. The bioships moved in coordinated groups, sharing their regenerative abilities through visible streams of energy that flowed between them. When one ship took damage, the others helped it heal. When Alliance forces focused on a single target, the entire group would turn and destroy the attacking ships with concentrated bioweapon fire. Captain Zuldar of the Andromedan flagship Conquest watched his forward shields collapse under enemy fire. His ship was one of the most powerful vessels in the Alliance fleet, armed with antimatter torpedoes and heavy plasma cannons, but even his best weapons seemed useless against the living enemy ships. "Admiral Keskatar, this is not working," Zuldar reported over the command channel. His voice carried the strain of a commander watching his fleet be destroyed. "Our weapons cannot overcome their regeneration rate. We need to fall back and develop new tactics." "Negative," Keskatar replied. "If we retreat now, the Vorthak will follow us to our home worlds. This is our last chance to stop them." But the battle was turning into a massacre. Alliance ships exploded one after another as bioenergy weapons found weak spots in their armor. The enemy swarm pressed forward like a living tide of destruction. In 30 minutes of fighting, the Alliance had lost over 200 vessels while the Vorthak had suffered no permanent casualties. Captain Lee had seen enough. He activated his command channel and spoke directly to Fleet Admiral Keskatar. "Admiral, request permission to leave rearguard position and engage the enemy." The response came immediately, filled with desperate hope and disbelief. "Captain Lee, your ship will be destroyed in minutes if you approach that swarm. Your weapons are untested against this enemy." "Our weapons are exactly what this enemy was designed to face," Lee replied calmly. "Permission to engage?" There was a long pause. Around the Alliance fleet, more ships died under the relentless bioweapon assault. Finally, Keskatar's voice came back over the channel. "Permission granted, but Captain, if your experimental weapons fail, you will die with the rest of us." Captain Lee smiled grimly. "Admiral, failure is not an option for humanity." He turned to his crew. "All stations prepare for combat approach. Take us directly toward the largest concentration of enemy vessels." Lieutenant Commander Cho's fingers danced over his control panel. "Setting course for grid reference 77 Alpha. That cluster contains approximately 50 bioships in tight formation." Dr. Park's voice came over the ship's communication system from the engineering section. "Captain, quantum cascade cannons are fully charged and ready to fire. All systems showing optimal function." The Indomitable broke away from its rear position and accelerated toward the enemy swarm. Its engines flared bright blue as the ship built up speed. On Alliance vessels throughout the fleet, crew members watched in amazement and horror as the small human ship rushed toward certain death. Counselor Velthar observed from his flagship's bridge as the human vessel approached the enemy formation. "The fools," he said to his officers. "They are going to throw their lives away for nothing. Their primitive weapons cannot succeed where our advanced systems have failed." But something about the human ship's approach seemed different. Instead of firing wildly like the Alliance vessels, the Indomitable moved with precise purpose toward a specific group of enemy bioships. Its weapon ports remained closed. Its systems showed no signs of panic or desperation. The Vorthak swarm noticed the approaching vessel. 50 bioships turned their attention away from the main Alliance fleet and focused on this new target. Streams of bioenergy lanced through space toward the Indomitable. The human ship rolled and twisted through the deadly fire with incredible agility, avoiding hit after hit that would have destroyed larger vessels. Captain Lee gripped his command chair as the ship shook under near misses. "Range to target cluster?" 15,000 kilometers and closing, Cho reported. "Enemy weapons are concentrating on our position. Recommend evasive action." "Negative. Hold course directly for the center of their formation." On the engineering deck, Dr. Park made final adjustments to the quantum cascade system. The weapon's targeting computer had locked onto the bioenergy connections between the enemy ships. Those same connections that made the Vorthak so powerful would become the pathway for their destruction. 10,000 kilometers, Cho announced. "We are now within their optimal firing range." Bioenergy beams filled the space around the Indomitable. The human ship's shields flared and sparked under the assault, but held. Captain Lee waited until the perfect moment. 5,000 kilometers. All enemy vessels are now within cascade range. "Fire," Captain Lee ordered quietly. Dr. Park activated the quantum cascade cannons. The effect was unlike anything anyone in either fleet had ever seen. Instead of the familiar energy beams or projectiles of conventional weapons, the quantum cannons produced streams of light that seemed to bend reality around them. When the cascade beam struck the first Vorthak bioship, it passed through the hull without creating any visible damage. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Alliance observers began to assume that the human weapons had failed. Some even started to compose messages of condolence for the brave but doomed crew of the Indomitable. Then the cascade effect began. The quantum energy followed the bio-neural networks that connected the Vorthak ships. It raced through their organic communication, systems like electricity through wires. Within seconds, the beam that had struck one vessel reached every ship in the 50-member cluster. The bioships began to convulse. Their bioluminescent patterns flickered and went dark. The healing abilities that had made them seem invincible turned against them as their own biological systems received corrupted signals. Hulls that had regenerated from weapon damage now began to tear themselves apart from within. One by one, the 50 Vorthak vessels ruptured like diseased organs. Their bioenergy connections became pathways of destruction. In less than 30 seconds, the entire cluster had been reduced to floating organic debris. Complete silence fell over both fleets. Alliance crew members stared at their displays in shock. The Vorthak swarm seemed to pause in confusion as they processed the loss of 50 vessels to a single shot from the small human ship. Captain Lee's voice broke the silence over the Alliance command channel. "Fleet Admiral Keskatar, this is the Indomitable. First target cluster eliminated. Moving to engage next formation." The galaxy had just witnessed the opening shot of humanity's entry into interstellar warfare, and it was only the beginning. News of the Indomitable's devastating attack spread through both fleets like wildfire. On Alliance ships, crew members who had been preparing for death suddenly found hope. On Vorthak biovessels, the hive mind that connected them all buzzed with something they had never experienced before: fear. Swarm Prime Kethmore floated in the neural center of his massive flagship, a bioship 10 kilometers long that pulsed with dark energy. His consciousness touched every vessel in the swarm through organic networks that had evolved over millions of years. For the first time in his species' history, he felt 50 connections simply vanish in an instant. The loss was more than tactical. Each bioship contained thousands of Vorthak mines linked together. When the quantum cascade destroyed their vessels, it had killed entire communities in seconds. The hive mind reeled from the psychic shock. Impossible. Kethmore's thoughts rippled through the swarm. No weapon can follow our bio-neural networks. No enemy has ever turned our greatest strength against us. But the evidence floated before him in space. Debris from 50 ships that had been destroyed by a single shot from the small human vessel. Kethmore focused the swarm's attention on the Indomitable. This one ship had become more dangerous than the entire Alliance fleet. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Captain Lee studied the tactical display showing the enemy's reaction. The Vorthak formation was changing, pulling ships away from tight clusters and spreading them out across a wider area. They are learning, he observed. They understand that their bio-connections make them vulnerable to cascade weapons. Lieutenant Commander Cho nodded from his station. The enemy is reorganizing to minimize networking between ships. If they break enough connections, our weapons will be less effective. Dr. Park's voice came over the communication system from engineering. Captain, I'm detecting massive energy spikes from the enemy flagship. That large bioship at the center of their formation is sending control signals to reorganize their entire fleet structure. Captain Lee considered this information. The Vorthak were adapting faster than Earth strategists had expected, but adaptation worked both ways. Dr. Park, can your cascade systems target that flagship directly? It's possible, but the range is extreme, and that ship appears to be the central node for their entire hive network. If we hit it with a full cascade, the effect might spread through their entire fleet. How many ships? All of them, Captain. Over 2,000 biovessels. The implications were staggering. A single shot could end the battle and eliminate the Vorthak threat forever. But it would also mean the complete destruction of an entire species. Before Captain Lee could respond, his communication system activated with an incoming message from the Alliance fleet. Multiple voices spoke at once as ship commanders demanded to know what had happened. Human vessel, this is Captain Zuldar of the Conquest. How did you destroy 50 enemy ships with one weapon shot? Our sensors showed no explosive damage, no energy drain, nothing that explains what we witnessed. Fleet Admiral Keskatar's crystalline form appeared on the main screen, pulsing with confused blue light. Captain Lee, we need to understand your weapons capabilities immediately. If you can repeat that attack, we might actually have a chance to win this battle. Captain Lee looked at his crew before responding. These were the moments that defined a species' place in galactic history. How Earth chose to use its power would determine how other civilizations saw humanity for generations to come. Admiral, our weapons exploit the biological networks that connect Vorthak vessels. The more tightly connected they are, the more effective our cascade system becomes. But how is this possible? Keskatar asked. No species has successfully weaponized quantum mechanics at this level. Dr. Park stepped onto the bridge to answer directly. Earth's isolation forced us to explore different paths than other civilizations. While your species improved energy weapons and armor systems, we studied the fundamental forces that hold matter together. We learned to manipulate quantum entanglement on a massive scale. Engineer Bang Woo-jin's voice joined the conversation from the engineering section. The cascade effect follows any biological or quantum connection it encounters. For most species, this would be useless because your ships use mechanical and energy-based systems. But the Vorthak rely on organic networks. Their strength has become their weakness. On the Zephyrian flagship, Counselor Velthar listened to this explanation with growing amazement and concern. He had spent years dismissing human technology as primitive. Now he realized that Earth might possess the most advanced weapons in the galaxy. If your cascade systems are so powerful, Velthar asked over the communication channel, why did Earth send only one ship? Why not build an entire fleet of these vessels? Admiral Kim Tae-sung, who had remained quiet during the battle, finally spoke. Because we hoped we would never need to use them. Quantum cascade weapons are not defensive systems. They are designed for one purpose, total destruction of biological enemies. The weight of that statement settled over the Alliance fleet. Earth had not sent a single ship because they could only afford one. They had sent one ship because one was enough to end any biological threat permanently. Captain Lee watched as the Vorthak swarm continued to reorganize. The enemy was becoming more cautious, but they were also becoming desperate. Scattered reports came in from Alliance scouts that more Vorthak fleets were approaching from other systems. This battle needed to end quickly. Dr. Park, prepare for maximum cascade effect. Target the enemy flagship. Captain, Dr. Park said carefully, if we fire at full power on their central command ship, the cascade will likely spread through their entire fleet. It will be total extinction for their species. Medical Officer Imnari spoke up from her station near the back of the bridge. She was a quiet woman who rarely participated in tactical discussions, but she had been monitoring the biosignatures from the destroyed enemy ships. Captain, I've been analyzing the quantum residue from our first attack. Each Vorthak ship contained thousands of individual minds. They are not machines or drones. They are living beings with their own thoughts and feelings. The bridge fell silent as the crew considered her words. They were not fighting robots or automated systems. They were fighting against another species that wanted to survive just as much as humanity did. Captain Lee closed his eyes for a moment and thought about Earth, about the billions of humans who were depending on him to protect them, about the Alliance worlds that would fall if the Vorthak could not be stopped here, about the moral weight of committing genocide against an entire species. When he opened his eyes again, his decision was clear. Dr. Park, modify the cascade system for surgical strikes. We will target individual ship clusters, not their entire fleet. We will defeat them without exterminating them. But Captain, Lieutenant Commander Cho protested, that approach will take much longer. It gives them more time to adapt and counter our weapons. Then we will adapt faster, Captain Lee replied. Humanity did not come to this battle to prove we could destroy our enemies. We came to prove we could protect our friends. Over the Alliance communication channels, alien commanders listened to this exchange with growing respect. They had expected the humans to use their devastating weapons to end the battle quickly and decisively. Instead, Earth was choosing the harder path that preserved life even for their enemies. Counselor Velthar found himself reconsidering everything he thought he knew about human nature. Captain Lee, he said quietly, your species continues to surprise us. Good, Captain Lee replied. Surprises are what keep life interesting. The Indomitable turned toward another cluster of Vorthak vessels. The quantum cascade cannons charged for a second shot. This time, everyone in both fleets knew exactly what was about to happen. The battle was far from over, but the galaxy had learned something important about humanity. Earth's greatest weapon was not their advanced technology. It was their refusal to become the kind of enemy they were fighting against. The battle had raged for 3 hours. The Indomitable had destroyed 6 more clusters of Vorthak ships with surgical precision, eliminating over 300 biovessels, while carefully avoiding shots that would cascade through the entire enemy fleet. Each attack saved Alliance lives and bought time for the surviving ships to regroup. But Swarm Prime Kethmore had finally adapted to the human threat. Deep in his flagship's neural center, he made a decision that went against millions of years of Vorthak evolution. He began severing the bio-neural connections between his ships. On the Indomitable's bridge, Dr. Park watched her sensor displays with growing concern. Captain, the enemy is deliberately breaking their network connections. They're isolating their ships from each other. Captain Lee studied the tactical display. The Vorthak formation had spread out across thousands of kilometers. Where once they had fought as a coordinated swarm, now they operated as individual vessels. It made them less efficient, but also much less vulnerable to cascade weapons. Clever, he admitted. They have sacrificed their greatest advantage to eliminate their greatest weakness. Lieutenant Commander Cho looked up from his station with alarm. Captain, new contacts on long-range sensors. Multiple Vorthak fleets approaching from 3 different star systems. Total count, over 4,000 additional bioships. The news hit the Alliance fleet like a physical blow. They had been struggling against 2,000 enemy vessels. Now they faced 6,000, and their most effective weapon had been neutralized by the enemy's adaptation. Fleet Admiral Keskatar's crystalline form pulsed with desperate red light as he opened communications to all ships. All Alliance vessels, this is Fleet Command. Prepare for tactical withdrawal to Rally Point Delta 7. Negative, Admiral. Captain Lee's voice cut through the channel. Retreat is not an option. If we run now, the Vorthak will hunt down and destroy every inhabited world in this sector. Captain, be realistic. We cannot defeat 6,000 enemy ships, especially now that they have adapted to your Cascade weapons. Captain Lee turned to Dr. Park. Doctor, what would happen if we overloaded all Cascade systems simultaneously? Maximum power, full spectrum burst? Dr. Park's face went pale. Captain, that would create a quantum rift in space-time itself. The cascade effect would spread through subspace in all directions. Any biological network within several star systems could be affected, including the approaching reinforcement fleets? Yes, but Captain, such an overload would also destroy our own ship. The quantum feedback would tear the Indomitable apart at the molecular level. Gunnery Sergeant Oh Chang-min spoke up from his weapon station. He was a veteran soldier with scars on his hands from years of handling dangerous equipment. Ma'am, could we set up a delayed overload? Program the Cascade to trigger after we evacuate the ship? The Cascade system requires constant monitoring and adjustment. It cannot be automated for that level of complexity. Communications Officer Han Mi-young looked up from her console with tears in her eyes. Captain, I'm receiving emergency transmissions from Earth Command. The Vorthak have launched simultaneous attacks on 12 different star systems. Millions of civilians are dying while we fight here. The weight of that information settled over the bridge like a heavy blanket. This battle was not just about stopping one enemy fleet. It was about saving entire civilizations from extinction. The stakes could not be higher. Captain Lee walked to the center of the bridge and looked at each of his crew members. These people had followed him across the galaxy to face an enemy that could destroy worlds. They deserved to know exactly what he was asking of them. The enemy has adapted to our conventional Cascade attacks, but they cannot adapt to a total quantum overload that tears apart the fabric of space itself. Such an attack would end the Vorthak threat permanently, but it would also end us. The bridge fell silent except for the quiet hum of ship systems. Outside, the massive enemy fleets continued their approach toward Alliance positions. Lieutenant Commander Cho was the first to speak. Captain, my family lives on Busan Colony. If we retreat, the Vorthak will reach them within 6 months. I volunteer to stay and operate the Cascade overload. As do I, added Chief Petty Officer Yoon. My children deserve to grow up in a galaxy, free from this threat. One by one, each crew member volunteered to remain and sacrifice their lives to save billions of others. Captain Lee felt a surge of pride in his species that was almost overwhelming. But Dr. Park had been thinking about the technical challenges. Wait, she said suddenly. There might be another way. What if we do not try to destroy the entire enemy fleet at once? What if we target something else? What do you mean, Doctor? The Vorthak hive mind depends on quantum entanglement across vast distances. Their individual ships might be isolated now, but their species consciousness still connects them all through. Subspace networks, if we cascade through those deeper connections, Captain Lee understood immediately. We would not destroy their ships. We would sever their hive mind permanently. Exactly. Without their collective intelligence, they would revert to individual biological entities. Still alive, but no longer capable of coordinated aggression on this scale. It was a brilliant solution, but also incredibly risky. Targeting subspace quantum networks required precision that had never been attempted before. A mistake could cascade through other species' biological systems, or even affect the fundamental structure of space-time itself. Swarm Prime Kethmore seemed to sense the change in his enemy's intentions. Through his remaining neural connections, he felt the human ship's quantum systems building to unprecedented power levels. Whatever the humans planned to do, it was beyond anything they had attempted before. He made a desperate decision. All remaining Vorthak vessels, over 5,000 bioships, including the approaching reinforcements, began converging on the Indomitable's position. If they could destroy the human vessel before it completed its attack, the swarm might still survive. Captain, Cho reported with tension in his voice. All enemy forces are moving toward our position. They are abandoning their attack on the Alliance fleet to concentrate on us. Good, Captain Lee replied calmly. That brings them all within range of our quantum field. Dr. Park worked frantically at her engineering controls, recalibrating the cascade system for a subspace network attack. Captain, I need 15 minutes to complete the modifications. Can we survive that long against the entire enemy fleet? Captain Lee looked at the tactical display showing thousands of bioships racing toward his position. The Alliance fleet was too far away to provide meaningful support. The Indomitable would have to face the entire Vorthak armada alone. All crew, this is the captain, he announced over the ship's communication system. We are about to attempt something that has never been tried before. We are going to sever the hive mind that makes the Vorthak a threat to all biological life. But to succeed, we must hold our position against impossible odds for 15 minutes. He paused and looked around the bridge at the faces of his crew. These people represented the best of humanity. Intelligent, brave, and willing to sacrifice everything for others. Earth sent one ship to this battle because one ship was all we needed. Today we proved that human determination can overcome any enemy, no matter how numerous or powerful. Today we show the galaxy what our species is truly capable of. The Vorthak swarm reached weapons range. Bioenergy beams began lancing through space toward the small human vessel. The final phase of the battle was about to begin, and the fate of billions hung in the balance. Dr. Park's voice echoed through the ship as she initiated the cascade modifications. Quantum field generators at maximum power, subspace targeting systems online, time to completion, 14 minutes and counting. The Indomitable stood alone against an ocean of enemies, buying time for humanity to save the galaxy. The Indomitable shook violently as hundreds of bioenergy beams struck its shields. The small human ship twisted and rolled through the deadly fire, its engines straining to keep it mobile, while Dr. Park completed her modifications to the cascade system. Around them, over 5,000 Vorthak vessels closed in like predators sensing wounded prey. Captain Lee gripped his command chair as another massive impact nearly threw him from his seat. Shield status? Shields at 60% and falling, Gunnery Sergeant O reported. Hull breaches on decks 4 and 7. Damage control teams are responding. Time remaining on cascade modifications? Dr. Park's voice came over the communication. System strained with concentration. 11 minutes, Captain. The subspace targeting matrix is incredibly complex. If I make a mistake, we could accidentally sever the neural networks of every biological species in this sector of the galaxy. Medical Officer Imnari worked frantically to treat crew members injured by the constant impacts. The ship's medical bay was filling with people suffering from concussions, burns, and broken bones, but no one abandoned their posts. Every person aboard understood that the next few minutes would determine the fate of billions. Lieutenant Commander Cho studied his tactical display through the smoke and sparks filling the bridge. Captain, the Alliance fleet is attempting to break through the enemy formation to reach us, but they are still 20 minutes away at maximum speed. We will not last 20 minutes under this assault, Captain Lee replied grimly. He opened a channel to the Alliance fleet. Fleet Admiral Keskatar, do not sacrifice your ships trying to rescue us. We knew this mission might be one way when we accepted it. Keskatar's crystalline form appeared on the main screen, pulsing with desperate blue light. Captain, your ship has already done more than we thought possible. If you can withdraw now, we can regroup and try a different approach. There is no different approach, Admiral. This is our only chance to end the Vorthak threat permanently. We will hold position until the cascade system is ready. On the Zephyrian flagship, Counselor Velthar watched the human vessel's heroic last stand with emotions he had never expected to feel toward the primitive species from Earth. The small ship was taking punishment that would have destroyed vessels twice its size, yet it continued to fight with impossible determination. They are buying time with their lives. he said quietly to his bridge crew. That single ship is facing our entire enemy alone so that the rest of us might live. General Krickstall nodded with newfound respect. I was wrong about the humans, Counselor. They did not come here to hide behind our protection. They came here to protect us. The battle reached its most desperate moment when Swarm Prime Kethamor's massive flagship entered weapons range. The 10-kilometer bioship dwarfed the Indomitable, like a whale approaching a minnow. Its primary biocannon charged with enough energy to crack a moon. Incoming massive energy spike, Communications Officer Hahn warned. The enemy flagship is targeting us directly. Captain Lee knew that his ship could not survive a direct hit from that weapon. But retreat was not an option, not when they were so close to ending the threat forever. Dr. Park, how much more time do you need? 7 minutes, Captain. The targeting matrix is almost complete, but I cannot rush the final calibrations. The enemy flagship fired. A beam of concentrated bioenergy, larger than the Indomitable itself, raced across space toward the human ship. There was nowhere to run, no way to avoid the attack, but the Alliance fleet had not given up on their human allies. Captain Zuldar of the Andromedan flagship Conquest threw his massive vessel directly into the path of the biobeam. The energy struck his ship's forward shields and overwhelmed them in seconds. Hull plating vaporized. Internal decks collapsed. But the Conquest absorbed enough of the blast to save the Indomitable. This is Captain Zuldar, came his voice over the communication channel, weak but determined. My ship is finished, but you are still alive, humans. Complete your mission. Other Alliance vessels followed Zuldar's example. Ships from a dozen different species threw themselves between the Vorthak swarm and the small human vessel. They could not match the Indomitable's devastating weapons, but they could buy time with their sacrifice. Dr. Park felt tears streaming down her face as she watched alien crews die to protect her ship. These beings who had once dismissed humanity as primitive were now giving their lives so that Earth's plan could succeed. Cascade system modifications complete, she announced. Targeting subspace quantum networks throughout the Vorthak collective consciousness. All systems ready to fire. Captain Lee looked around his damaged bridge one final time. His crew was bloodied but unbroken. His ship was battered but still functional. The alliance they had come to join had proved worthy of Earth's respect and sacrifice. The quantum cascade cannon discharged with a sound unlike anything heard before. Instead of the focused beam of previous attacks, this pulse spread out through subspace itself. It raced through dimensions beyond normal space, following the quantum entanglement networks that connected the Vorthak hive mind across multiple star systems. The effect was immediate and total. Every Vorthak vessel stopped moving simultaneously. Their bioluminescent patterns flickered and went dark. The coordination that had made them so dangerous simply ceased to exist. But the bioships did not die. Their hulls remained intact. Their life support systems continued to function. The Khan. Individual Vorthak creatures aboard each vessel were still alive and unharmed. They were simply no longer connected to the collective intelligence that had driven their species to consume entire civilizations. Swarm Prime Kethmore felt the hive mind collapse around him like a dying star. For the first time in his existence, he was alone in his own thoughts. The voices of millions of his kind that had always filled his consciousness were simply gone. He was still alive, still intelligent, but no longer part of something greater than himself. Across the battlefield, Vorthak vessels began to withdraw. Without their collective intelligence coordinating attacks and sharing resources, individual ships could no longer maintain their aggressive formations. They scattered in all directions, seeking to return to their home territories as separate beings rather than components of a vast swarm. The Alliance fleet watched in amazement as their seemingly unstoppable enemy simply fell apart and fled. The threat that had consumed 3 star systems and killed billions was ending not with massive explosions, but with the quiet dissolution of a hive mind that had existed for millions of years. Captain Lee slumped in his command chair as the adrenaline of battle finally began to fade. His ship had survived impossible odds. His crew had saved the galaxy, and they had done it without committing genocide against their enemies. Fleet Admiral Keskatar's voice came over the communication channel, filled with wonder and gratitude. Captain Lee, how do we thank you for what you have done? Your species has saved us all. No thanks are necessary, Admiral. We are all part of the same galaxy now. We protect each other. The communication channel remained open as voices from across the Alliance fleet expressed their amazement and gratitude. Species that had dismissed humanity as primitive now spoke, of Earth with reverence and respect. Counselor Velthar was among the first to formally apologize. Captain Lee, I owe your species a debt that can never be repaid. We mocked Earth for sending one ship. We did not understand that one ship crewed by humans was worth more than our entire combined fleet. You fought bravely alongside us when it mattered most, Captain Lee replied. That is all we could ask from our allies. Dr. Park joined Captain Lee on the bridge as the damaged Indomitable began its long journey back to Earth. Around them, the Alliance fleet formed an honor guard, escorting humanity's representatives home like heroes returning from a great victory. What happens now? Dr. Park asked as she looked at the stars ahead of them. Captain Lee smiled. Now the galaxy knows that humanity keeps its promises. We said we would protect our allies, and we did. We said one ship was all we needed, and we were right. And our quantum cascade technology? We will share the defensive applications with the Alliance. But the weapon systems remain Earth's secret. Some knowledge is too dangerous to spread widely. As the fleet traveled through hyperspace toward human territory, word of the battle spread across the galaxy. Earth, the newcomer species that had been dismissed and underestimated, had developed weapons beyond the understanding of older civilizations. More importantly, they had shown the wisdom and restraint to use such power responsibly. Applications for alliance with Earth began arriving within hours. Species that had ignored humanity's previous diplomatic overtures now sought friendship and cooperation. Trade agreements, research partnerships, and mutual defense treaties were offered from across known space. But Captain Lee knew that Earth's real victory was not in the weapons they had built or the enemies they had defeated. Their victory was in proving that a species could be both powerful and moral, advanced and humble, deadly and merciful. The Indomitable had gone to battle as one ship among hundreds. It returned home as the flagship of a new galactic power. Humanity had taken its place among the stars not through conquest or intimidation, but through courage, sacrifice, and the refusal to become the kind of enemy they fought against.